3 days. That's all I was gone. And when I came back, there was a 7-foot chain-link fence cutting straight through my backyard bright orange. No trespassing. Signs zip-tied every few feet, and a security camera aimed directly at my kitchen window. My creek, the same one my daughter used to float leaf boats on, was sealed off like a crime scene. I stood there, frozen bags still in hand, staring at a fence that split my land in half. And that's when I heard the voice that would ruin my peace for months to come. "Sir, you're trespassing on a restricted area." I turned, and there she was. Karen. Platinum blonde bob, mirrored sunglasses, clipboard in one hand, a fake badge dangling from her neck that looked like it came out of a cereal box. She was dressed like a cop in a low-budget TV show vest marked HOA Patrol. Radio clipped to her belt, and that smug, self-important look that made my skin crawl. "This area's under the Creekside Watershed Environmental Plan," she said, all rehearsed authority. "Per Article 12, Section G, you're not allowed beyond this fence." I blinked at her, then at the fence, then back at her. "This is my property," I said, "and you're not law enforcement." "I'm HOA enforcement," she snapped, "and continued non-compliance will be documented and referred to the proper municipal agencies." That was my welcome home. I went inside, pulled out my deed, and traced the property lines with shaking hands. The creek, the banks, the riparian zone, all mine. I had maps, photos, even county surveys. The HOA had no claim here. Still, I sent them an email, polite but firm, asking who authorized the fence. The next morning, I got a one-line reply. "Due to ongoing environmental protection measures, access to shared water resources may be temporarily restricted." Shared water resources. That phrase lit a fuse I didn't even know I had. 2 days later, Karen showed up again. This time in full tactical cosplay cargo pants, reflective vest, labeled Compliance Unit fake body cam strapped to her chest. "Sir, I'll need you to step back from the restricted zone," she barked. "You're serious?" I asked. "You built a fence through my property, and now you're giving me orders." She puffed up her chest. "This is an active rehabilitation site. The only thing that needs rehabilitation here is you," I said. Her lips curled into a smirk. "You're digging your own grave, sir." I wanted to laugh, but instead I just went inside. My hands were trembling. Anger, disbelief, fear. It all mixed together until I couldn't tell which was which. That night I stared out the window at that fence and the red light blinking on the camera. My wife had passed years ago, but her voice echoed in my head. "You don't own land, Jack. You care for it." I felt like I'd failed her. Over the next week, Karen doubled down. Every morning she patrolled the fence like she was guarding a military base, muttering into her walkie-talkie, writing citations on her clipboard. One day, I caught her inside my property taking photos of my garden hose. "Unapproved irrigation near a protected stream," she said. I just stared at her, too stunned to speak. That night, I called a lawyer. His name was Jordan Blake, specialized in HOA abuse. When I explained what was happening, he actually laughed. "They can't do that," he said. "They have zero jurisdiction over natural waterways. It's private land. They're bluffing." That word bluffing stuck with me. I decided to dig deeper. I went down to the county records office and requested every document tied to my parcel and the HOA's so-called environmental project. The clerk looked through the files and shook her head. "Only thing, here's a denied easement request from 2017, she said. "Nothing approved since." That's when it hit me they weren't mistaken. They were faking it. Jordan and I filed a cease and desist order for trespass and impersonation, but I wanted more than defense. I wanted control, so I looked upstream, literally. See, the creek didn't start on my property. Its headwaters were about half a mile up the ridge on land that had been abandoned after a failed housing project back in 2008. I spent 2 sleepless nights tracing old parcel maps, calling the county, and chasing down a bankruptcy trustee named Marcia. When I finally reached her, she said, "Those lots are still available for private sale, non-developable, but they include riparian rights." "Riparian rights," I repeated. She heart pounding. She confirmed it. Those parcels controlled the water source. The headwaters. If I bought them, I'd legally own the origin of the creek, the water that flowed through every inch of Karen's imaginary conservation zone. 3 days later, I held the deed in my hand. I didn't tell a soul. When the next HOA notice arrived accusing me of unauthorized water diversion and hostile conduct toward compliance officers, I smiled. Then, one afternoon, my neighbor Derek caught me by the mailbox. "Hey man," he said, glancing around. "Karen's telling everyone you're trying to flood the clubhouse." I laughed. "That's funny," I said, "because I just bought the upstream watershed." He blinked. "You what?" "Yeah. So, technically I could flood the clubhouse. But I won't." His jaw dropped. Holy hell. Word spread fast. The HOA called an emergency meeting. I showed up with a manila folder under my arm. The rec center was packed, neighbors whispering Karen front and center with her fake badge hanging proudly. When they opened the floor, I stepped up. "My name's Jack Lawson," I said, my voice steady. "I own Lot 42, the one with the creek that runs through it. And, as of last week, I also own the upstream parcels that supply it. So, unless you have permits or court orders saying otherwise, this fence, this entire nature corridor, is illegal." I held up the deed. "Any further interference with the creek will be treated as trespassing and water theft under state law." Silence. You could have heard a pin drop. Karen's face went pale. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. I handed the papers to the HOA secretary, turned, and walked out. No applause, no cheers, just that heavy, satisfying quiet that comes when the truth finally lands. The next morning, Karen was back at the fence binder in one hand, phone recording in the other. "You can't operate heavy equipment on protected land," she shouted as I supervised a small crew restoring a washed-out bank. "Good morning, Karen," I said. "Hope you brought your permits. This violates restoration zone ordinances." I pointed to the laminated county permit staked right next to her fence. "Filed 2 weeks ago. You're welcome to check with Public Works." Her sunglasses slipped just enough for me to see her eyes twitch. "That doesn't supersede HOA guidelines." "Actually, it does," I said. "Because the HOA doesn't have jurisdiction here. Beck from the sheriff's office can confirm if you'd like." She turned red, muttered something to her so-called task force, and stomped back to her golf cart. An hour later, a city inspector arrived. Real badge this time. "We got a complaint," he said. I handed him the full folder: permits, maps, surveys. He flipped through, nodded, and said, "Looks good to me. Honestly, this is cleaner than most projects I see. Keep up the good work." I watched him leave the wind whipping the fence tape and felt that old weight finally lift. For the first time in months, I wasn't reacting, I was winning. But Karen wasn't done. She never is. Within days, she started a smear campaign, flyers on doors, videos online, claiming I was endangering the community ecosystem. She even filmed herself at the fence pretending to give a press conference. And the worst part, some people believed her. I'd walk down the street and see neighbors whisper kids pulled a little closer to their parents. I started wondering if this fight was even worth it. Maybe I was the problem. Maybe I should have just let it go, paid the dues, ignored the fence, and lived quietly. One night, sitting alone by the window, I almost convinced myself to stop. But then I looked out at the creek, the same creek where my daughter used to play, where I'd planted an oak tree the year my wife died, and I realized I wasn't fighting for pride. I was fighting for something sacred. That was the night I decided to finish it. When the annual community forum came around, I posted a notice on the board. "The Truth About the Creek Presentation" by Jack Lawson. The gym was packed. Karen sat near the front, surrounded by her loyal few, chin high like a general before battle. I walked to the podium with a USB stick in my pocket. "Thanks for giving me a few minutes," I began. "I know there's been confusion lately, rumors, threats, fences, but tonight I'm here to show you proof." I clicked the remote. The projector lit up. Slide 1, a map of the neighborhood. Slide 2, my property, and the 5 upstream parcels outlined in red. Slide 3, the deed stamped by the county recorder. Slide 4, a screenshot of HOA expenses, $26,000 spent on an unapproved creek restoration. No vote, no permit, no notice. Gasps rippled through the room. "This," I said quietly, "is what's been happening behind your backs." The HOA took your dues to fund an illegal project on land they don't own land. They tried to steal from me. All eyes turned to Karen. What permits do you have? Karen, someone shouted. Why didn't we vote on this? Another asked. She stammered, dodged, deflected, but the tide had turned. The same people who once nodded along with her now stared like they were seeing her for the first time. By the end of the meeting, she wasn't surrounded by followers anymore. She was alone, clutching her clipboard like a life raft. A week later, I heard the whispers. The board had called an emergency audit. The HOA president admitted she'd forged signatures and authorized fake contracts. Karen was under investigation. Within days, her name vanished from the website. 2 weeks after that, her house went up for sale. I didn't see her leave, but one morning her golf cart was gone, her blinds shut, and for the first time in months, the fence line was quiet. I walked down to the creek. The air was cold, and clean water sliding over stones in a steady whisper. I ran my hand through the current, the same current she tried to claim, and I couldn't help but smile. Not out of gloating, but out of relief. Because in the end, she never understood what this fight was about. It wasn't about fences or rules or power. It was about knowing what's yours and having the courage to stand in front of it when someone tries to take it away. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do isn't fight louder, it's just hold your ground.